Happy Audio Club Monday, this is János, Real World Audio, and today we are looking into hearing. What can you do to improve your hearing for listening to audio? So if you are an audiophile, this video is for audiophiles and music lovers who really are aimed at not just keeping the level of their hearing ability, but want to improve on it and to be a little bit more aware of how and what you can hear and what is the capability of your ears exactly. Because we can listen to a lot of videos talking about generally what humans can hear, what you can expect for your age group, but you can be anywhere. So there are generalizations, but they don't tell you much. And here now I'm looking at feedback. I have received comments on my latest video, and Middle Earth Limited is sharing this wonderful story about his hearing, and I think this is really important to know for everyone, and this is why I'm making this video, because this is going to be different from a video that you would hear from a, like, let's say, a medical professional who works on the field. And when you do that, there are like standard sets of measurements, and you measure that, and then they give you a medical diagnosis for your hearing, and that does tell you some information, but the problem with it is that people take it as the gospel, and once it's done, then some people with really stuck mentality, they think that okay, now you know everything about your hearing and you are set for life, or you are ruined for life, because it's been set in a stone table or on a clay tablet presented to you by a physician, and that's how the world is, and nothing can change it. And there's nothing further than the truth from that. For example, if you want to be honest to yourself, then do the hearing test, the same hearing test, couple different times during the day. Like, take it in the morning, take it in the afternoon, and take it in the evening, and you can even repeat it on different days. Do it on a weekend and do it on a weekday. Do it when you are tired, and do it when you are hyped up and really well rested. And you will realize that when you take these tests during these different times, different days, it can give you even radically different results. For example, this is what happened to me, that last year, when so every year when I go to a physical checkup, I was always asked to have a hearing test done, and the basic hearing test they do here in the US is you listen to 5 test tones, 1 kilohertz, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. So that's the basic hearing test that they do. You listen to these 5 tones, and 1 year, on one ear, here on the left ear, I could basically hear 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, and 3 kilohertz something, and 4, 5 I didn't hear anything. What happened there? And then the next year I hear perfectly well everything, and before I heard everything perfectly well. The difference was that during that time when I took that test, I drove to the physician's office building with my truck with the window down on the highway, and the noise of the highway stressed out my ears so much that my left ear shut down to a degree that I didn't hear any high frequency at all, because of the loud noise of the highway. And I noticed that, yeah, it stayed like that for several days. It took me several days until my hearing returned back to normal from the excessive noise in the highway, driving on the highway at highway speed with the window fully down. And that's why it is very important here to share that if you are exposed to loud noises, always protect your ear. And if you know that you are going to get into a situation when there's loud noises, wear ear protection. And if there's no ear protection available, always just carry with yourself a napkin and just tear off a piece from the corner, make a ball, stick it in your ear. And no, it won't make the bass frequencies any quieter, but the high frequencies and the extremely highs will be drastically, violently lowered in level. So the sounds which are like 10 kilohertz and above are extremely well attenuated by those pieces of paper that you stick in the ear. So it is not an excuse that you do not have proper hearing, proper earplugs. Everyone has access to paper napkins. Just stick it in and have it with you at all times when you go to, like, let's say, to the movies or to concerts, or you drive, you go to work, anywhere. And even at the cost of looking silly, protect your ears, because your hobby is listening to music. And if it is of any importance to any of you, then you must be aware and take care. And you see, not just me, but your fellow audiophiles are also giving this advice to you, that this is what works on the long term. You need to protect your hearing. And what is very important, you see, my hearing was degraded to around 12 kilohertz-ish, but it has improved to around 15 based on online testing. And you see, that's one thing, that when you do a hearing test and it shows that maybe you can hear up to 12 kilohertz, it doesn't mean that you have permanently lost the ability to hear anything above 12 kilohertz. It just means that at this point of your life you have accumulated enough stress and or enough stressors on your hearing, so that your auditory system is shutting down, either physically or mentally, because the brain has the ability to produce anti-phase sound waves, or the impression of those. We call that tinnitus. And the tinnitus is there because you are exposed to very loud sounds that make processing the information for your brain very hard, because it's all those high frequency sound that the brain uses to process the 3D image where the sound comes from. And if you have those constant really loud noises, then your brain has a very hard time to build up a three-dimensional image of the sounds surrounding you. So when you have an air conditioner like I have on top of my head, well, but quite a bit further inside the ceiling, but it's really loud, and it does cause significant tinnitus. But I do not notice this because the level of it is kind of lowish and in the high frequencies. But when I get out of, and when I'm in this room, I don't notice it, because it is cancelling out the noise that I'm subject to. But if I go to a place that is quieter than this room, and there I start notice the tinnitus, that was keeping the noises that I hear from being a problem, a constant drain on my brain's processing power. So basically, so now this builds up a lot of tinnitus in my ears. So that's why I have these closed headphones, and these act as isolation. So my ears are exposed to less of that noise, so the ears develop less tinnitus. And eventually as time goes by, if you are exposed to this a lot, then that will tell your brain to just constantly ignore those frequencies at which those noises are coming to your ear. And if so, let's say those noises are like, let's say, start around like 13 kilohertz and up, then it will tell your brain to just shut down that region and you won't be able to hear anything. Of course, that's not the only reason. There's many other reasons why you might not be hearing something, but this is something that I have experienced myself, and most audio buddies and friends of mine whom I talked about the subject, everyone shared with me that whatever you are exposed to, whatever is causing you distress, once you remove it from your life, your hearing will vastly improve. Will it improve to 100%? Probably not, because you have also probably suffered some damage, some physical damage that you cannot recover from. And once you have that physical damage, then through rest you won't be able to regain hearing those frequencies. However, when you do not hear some frequencies, or you hear them much quieter because your brain is tired, your ears are tired, you've been exposed to it for years and years and years, and once you stop that and you let your ears and your brain to adapt, then you will slowly or faster, it depends on each and individual case, you will gain the ability to hear better and better. And sometimes these noises that we get, like that you are exposed to, and if it's been like long-term exposure, like decades and decades, it can mean that you will have tinnitus and hearing issues for years. So the tinnitus might take years to go away, but don't give up, just work on it. And I'm not saying that every case of tinnitus will go away when you work on it. Far from it, probably not. You consult your doctor, he will be able to tell you more about it, what's in your case, what's happening. But what I know from my case and every single darn person's case who has tried it, who has worked on it, who I have talked about it, every single person reported that when they work on their hearing problems, it gets better and better. For some, it gets just a little bit better over time, but everyone reports significant results over significant time of putting significant effort into it. As the ex-governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, said, whatever you do in your life, the result will be equivalent to the energy you put in it. He used the analogy of closing the door of the toilet. If you just put the effort, as much effort into something as just shoving the toilet's door, that's the result you are going to get, 0. If you put effort into it, dedicate time, dedicate awareness, attention, then you will progress with it. And that's okay. So this is something fantastic, and also Nick shared about it, and you see that our hearing is all about attention and awareness. And now I'm going to share you a wonderful trick. What you can do, you can look up an online tone generator. There's a bunch on the internet. This one, I will share the link for this tone generator, and it's super nice. You can click at the musical notes, let's say A4, that's 440 hertz. It tells you what's the hertz, A4, right? And then you hit play, and then you hear the note. And then you can play around, and all of them are at the same volume, but when you click on each, you will notice that you hear some are quieter, some are louder. So let's just take a little break and then continue from here. For you, this break will take 0 seconds. For me, it may take some time. Here we go. So back again. The benefit of using an online tone generator that has the music notes added to it is that you can make yourself more aware of actual music, of how the music notes sound. So, and this helps us to be a lot more aware of the music. When you listen to, okay, this is an A4, that's how it sounds, and it's not just like going for numbers like 500 hertz or 20 hertz or 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz. These numbers are when you tell it to a musician, oh, how my system is doing at 20 hertz or 1 kilohertz, they think you are, what's wrong with you? Did you just had a traumatic brain injury? Those numbers are meaningless. Pick frequencies that belong to actual music notes, like 440 hertz, 220 hertz, like 98 hertz. These kinds of numbers, 110 hertz, like 110 is an A2. So, but don't pick like 100 hertz, because there is no note like a G and G flat, G sharp. None of them are at 100 hertz. This is like a G sharp, and it's like 103.826 hertz. And then G2 is like a little under 98. Or I think it might be 98. Just this is like a rounding error. Anyway, so this is a fantastic opportunity that you can train your ear to recognize sounds. And the basis of absolute hearing is that you need to practice. And many of you might recognize that actually, hey, I have absolute hearing, which means that you can tell like a G from a G sharp easily just by hearing it, and tell, oh, was it a G or a G sharp? Oh, it was a G sharp. But you don't know it unless you practice it. And this, so now that was just one thing that you can play around by pointing at these numbers. Actually, it continues more. It's just my screen cuts off here. But if I do that, oh, look at that. So it goes up to B8, and so 7.9 kilohertz roughly. So it doesn't offer you notes higher than that. And if I click on that, let's see, it's like right here, that's it. That's the highest frequency that that is given. And why? Because that's the highest note on the piano. There's no higher notes than that. And basically why? Because beyond that, we lose the ability to tell pitch. So like 8 kilohertz and up, even those who have perfect pitch, they cannot tell musical notes from each other. And that's why music instruments do not have higher bass frequencies than that, because it's not music anymore. It's just a beep. It's just a whine that doesn't have any character or substance to it. And so let's go back here and make it so that we can see things. However, when you go, you can directly enter any number that's higher than 7.9 kilohertz. You can enter like 12 kilohertz, and you can go as high as 20 kilohertz. It doesn't allow anything higher than that. However, you have to be conscious of two different things. One of them, if you are using your speakers to listen, then you are going to have the speaker's frequency response skew your experiences. So if you want to tell, like, let's see, that at maybe, let's say, just click here at the G4 and G5, when you click at those two, let's just make it a little louder, like even maybe so that you can hear it as well. G4 and G5, G6. So when you play around with them, you will notice that they don't sound the same volume. It's like someone turning the volume up. When I was going up in pitch, it sounded like louder and louder. But no, it was exact same volume, but our ears sensitivity to the sound is different. However, because we are listening to speakers, you don't know whether your speaker's frequency response is flat or not. If it's not flat, that's going to skew the results. Even if your speaker's frequency response is flat, your room's modes and your position, your placement in the room will also skew the results. So that's why if you use your speakers, you can really tell only, like, use this as a tool to learn how a G5 sounds different from an A5, for example. But whether how your ear sensitivity is between each note, then it's hard to tell, because you are also have the variability of your speaker's frequency response plus the room. And those of you who say, oh, I have EQ'd my speakers to the room, so the room modes are cancelled out. Now, my observation to you is that, is your head at the exact same position where your measuring microphone was that you used to tune the response? And if your head is exactly there where the measuring mic was, then yes, what you measured is correct. But you move this much, or you slouch this much in your chair, and it's different. So you are already skewing the result. And that's because the room modes cannot be cancelled out. The room is there. The only way to cancel out the room modes is to demolish your room. What you can do to make your room become irrelevant is get a pair of closed headphones. And that's what I recommend when you use this to test your hearing, of how your hearing is. Put on those closed earphones, preferably closed earphones, and then it cancels out the outside noises, so you can hear a lot better the fainter sounds, because the noises from the room don't affect you, and also the frequency response issues coming from the room modes and loudspeakers, they are irrelevant as well when you have a good pair of headphones for you. So what I did is that I did a little test for myself yesterday. And how you do your test? What I did yesterday. Now I'm going to share about it. And I'm going to share what I did a couple years ago and why that was bad compared to this. So what I did a couple years ago is that I just used my computer's sound card. I just plugged in the headphones directly to the headphone output on the Dell computer, on the PC. And that's what I've been doing for years and years, for a decade plus, and I was under the impression that my hearing stops at 17.5 kilohertz. I don't hear anything higher than that. And then I have this little USB DAC that is much higher quality than the sound card inside the computer, and I hooked that up and I set it to 96 kilohertz sampling mode. Why that? And why not 44 kilohertz or 48? So that it gives us ample space, so if I test even the 20 kilohertz, it's not getting close to that region where it's getting problematic. So like 44 kilohertz, technically you get like a response up to 22 kilohertz, but anything like getting close to 20 kilohertz, you are going to have issues with that sampling rate. So when you have like a 96 kilohertz sampling rate, 20 kilohertz reproduction should be pretty easy and non-problematic. Even like a 30 kilohertz should be enough. Sadly though, this program allows only 20.0 kilohertz max. So I don't know how far my hearing extends because the program doesn't allow to go beyond 20.0 kilohertz. However, what I have realized a few years ago when I used this USB DAC as testing, that I can hear up to 20 kilohertz, no problem. And so yesterday I did this test again, and what I did is that I plugged in the speakers to the USB DAC, and then I chose the volume. I put it down to 10%, and you can put it to wherever you want, but I think 10% is a really good baseline. And then toy around with your output volume so that when you click on the A4 note, this is where you start with your listening test. This is the middle key on the piano. A4, that's 440 hertz. And make it so that this note is kind of, you can hear it comfortably, but it's not loud at all. Make it like a soft sound, soft. And the reason for that is that this is like kind of like a baseline level. Right? At 440 hertz, that's like a comfortable sensitivity for our hearing. And as we go higher in the frequencies, of hearing will be a lot more sensitive. So what you are going to hear, you will hear it as if the volume is turning up. We are turning up the volume a lot. And that's why I set it to 10% here, because as we are going to go to like 15 kilohertz and higher, you will have to crank this higher just to hear anything at that volume. And that's normal. That's how the human hearing works, that when you set it to like a certain level, that you can, it sounds like a soft sound at 440 hertz, then at 15 or 16 or 17 kilohertz you won't hear anything at all, even in a very quiet room. And so that's where I started, 10%, headphones on, and then just hit the play, and for a few seconds listen to the test tone. Maybe I just make it louder so that it, so now I think now you heard that. Microphone probably picked that up. So this thing is generating sine waves. So this is just a pure sine wave of that specific frequency, and of course it needs to be done with headphones on. But now for your for the video, I'm just using these sounds so that you can hear it also when I push it. And what I noticed yesterday is that I chose the A4 as the baseline, and let's see, I'm looking now on my other screen for my notes. And after that I was going for the A5, which is double the frequency, 880 hertz. And that was somewhat louder, actually quite a bit louder than the 440 hertz. It sounded what I would call as like a 4 dB louder. That was my impression yesterday. It's like almost like making your volume like step up with 4 dB on the count of your stepped attenuator, if you have one. Like I have a transformer based volume control, an autoformer volume control, and I know the dB steps between each of the volume settings, so I'm quite familiar that when I change the sound by a certain dB volume, then what it is the change that I'm experiencing. So that's why I'm calling it as 4 dB, because it gives me the impression as if I turn the system 4 dB louder, and that's between 440 Hz and 880 Hz. And now what I did is I went an octave higher, so like A6, that's 1.76 kilohertz. Ah, that was loud, right? And the perception of that for me, that it was the same loudness as 880 Hz. And I recommend for you to do this as well, like have it like you can even go like A1, A2, A3, A4, and just go through the whole list how it sounds like. But I can tell that it depends on your headphones, because even if like these headphones, the Sennheiser CS598 CS, it says it's rated from 20 Hertz to 22 or 28 kilohertz, something like that. That's the rating, so it is rated 20 Hertz. But actually with this DAC and the headphone combination, even at 40 Hertz, it's kind of deplorable. It's not doing anything useful or not too good. So you might need some really extra fancy headphones to look for anything below 50 Hertz, and or I would dare say even like below 80 Hertz. And then I'm not saying that these headphones cannot do low sounds, but they might not be as impressive with the sub 40 Hertz region as you would think. Anyway, so that's also a good way to test how good your headphones are. Are they as good as they specify on the spec sheet, or maybe they're as good, just the amplifier cannot drive them properly? That's another reason. So you can test out your DACs as well, the different DAC with the same headphone, and you can test the low end response, the bass response, like hit it with a 30 Hz note, and then you can compare the different DACs. Wow, this has a much better bass response. Here I'm having like a nice clean boom, deep sound wave, and with the other it's nothing happening. So let's see, like if we go to 28 Hz, do we hear anything? I hear some from the room, but I doubt that the microphone, this is not picking up anything at that frequency. Sorry guys, that was a really stupid test. Anyway, so what I did is that I went through this scale from A4 to A8, and then this time I didn't bother about the lower notes, the bass notes, because I know that my amplifier headphone combo doesn't really give me much information about that, or much usable intel about that, and I'm much more worried now about, or much more curious about, the high frequency of the hearing, which is the one that we have more awareness how it is lost or kept. And so what I did is I went through the whole series up to basically, does it have A9? A8. Okay, so actually I did an A9 as well. It's not on the table, but what I did is that you click on A8, so it says 7040 Hz, and it says X2. You click on X2, it multiplies it, so this is A9. So you can also do A9, you can do this trick. So those notes that are not on the table, you can just hit the multiplier, and if it's under 20,000 Hertz, it will give you that note and you can listen to it. And what I noticed that I did this, and then I did some spot checks as well for those frequencies which are above 14 kilohertz, and as above 14 kilohertz, we do not have the ability to tell tonal purity. Now I have degraded my experiments to just looking at 14.5 kilohertz as the next step, 15 kilohertz, 16, 16.5, 17 kilohertz, 17.5, 18, and it's like a half kilohertz increments. And what I've noticed is that of course when we go when I went from like 14 kilohertz and higher, it was like as if the volume is like turning down, and it went lower and lower. And when I hit 16 kilohertz, then I had to crank it up from 11% to 30% just to hear it. And that's because my ear's sensitivity is that much lower at 16 kilohertz compared to 15 kilohertz. And now it should not be that sharp of a jump normally, but what I've noticed is that at 16 kilohertz I put it down barely audible because I have a loud ringing in my ears at this frequency. I have tinnitus because the AC puts out a really loud noise at that territory. And I was looking at it, and my notes said that this range where I have a massive amount of tinnitus starts from 16 kilohertz and it goes up to 18 kilohertz. So the 16 to 18 is it's tinnitus for me, and I had to go like at 16 kilohertz 30%, and then 16.5 it dropped down to 20%. So the ringing there is not as strong as at 16. So my ears is much more sensitive at 16.5 than at 16.0. And then going to 17, I had to crank it up to 50%, so a lot louder just to hear anything. And I noticed that my tinnitus is stronger at 17.0 kilohertz. So this is also a tool that you can use to trace down your tinnitus, which are those offending frequencies that cause the ringing in your ear. And you can this way learn to identify what is the tinnitus that you have, that it's not just a single ringing, it is the composite of multiple frequencies ringing in your ear. And now you might have say that I have ringing in my ear. What does it help me to know that it's not just a ringing, but it's like 10 notes ringing? Wow. What made the difference is that now you are aware of it. And by listening to each of the notes, you will be able to tell that which of those tinnitus ringings are which frequencies. And because the tinnitus is with you persistently, probably day and night, you hear it every night, every day. I hear it every night when I'm going to sleep. At that moment, I hear all of it. And I can just go through them and identify each of the ringing notes one by one. I can count 7, 8, or 9 every night if I'm identifying them. And that way you can learn that at which frequencies are those notes at, how do they sound, and when you hear music, you can correlate it to your tinnitus. That music there had that same frequency component as my highest pitch ringing in my ear. Wow, that was 17.5 kilohertz. That edge that flute had over there, or that sax, and that's how you learn, and you will be able to tell more and more of what you are hearing, and the point is that you become more conscious of what's happening around you. And also the good thing is that the more conscious you are of your tinnitus, because before, normally, if you don't do these practices to identify which are the frequencies at which you have the tinnitus, when you are exposed to sounds like that, you are not even aware that it makes your tinnitus worse. But if you know already, you are familiar with your tinnitus, how does the ringing sound in your ears, then you will be way more aware when those insults happen to your ear that trigger that tinnitus. So you will be able to get your napkin out of your pocket and stuff it in your ears to protect you from further harm. So basically, with my journey, as I'm looking at my notes, when I reached up to 18.5 kilohertz, I noticed that there I still had to keep the volume at 50%, but my note there is easy to spot at 50%. I have cleared the tinnitus zone. Even when I crank it down to 40%, I still hear it. So when you look at the equal loudness contours or the Fletcher-Munson curves, you see that at 18.5 kilohertz, it really starts to take off. So at that volume, you only hear extremely loud notes only. So when it's extremely loud, that's when you hear it at 8. And that's just kind of fantastic that I can hear it at a significantly lower power output than an 18.0 kilohertz note, and that's because I do not have tinnitus there. And if I didn't have the tinnitus at 18 kilohertz, I would hear that even better. So that is something to look forward to for myself to work on, and that's why I did this test, so I can do a double check, a thorough investigation on what's happening, what are the frequencies I still have, and what can I do more to minimize that damage, minimize that, and improve my hearing. For me, it's also a learning experience, and I have to work on my hearing. It's not that I put in some work in the past and now I'm good for life. No, we are biological organisms, and each single day, each single minute, it either is improving if we put the effort into it, and if we don't put the effort into it, it's degrading by default. So that's how all biological organisms work. That's how your muscles work. That's how your skeleton works. That's how your sex life works. If you put in the effort, it improves, and if you neglect it, it runs down. And a very easy example for that is like if you do martial arts, for example, and you like break stones or break bricks, and you do it, and you have practiced it enough that with a punch you can break a brick and you're fine. But you can do that only because you are practicing it on a regular basis. Now, if you don't break any bricks for a year and you punch the brick with the same strength, you will just smash the bones to pulp, because the bones, they need that constant impact to keep the bone remodeling in such a shape that is able to withstand stress. So our bones are also very much living organic structures that change day by day, and basically within the course of a couple of weeks, your bone is can be remodeled to an extreme different state, and you can have the toughest bone in the world. If someone ties you to a bed, maybe you had an accident and you cannot move, you have to stay in the bed for a couple of months, and you get up, and then you can break your bones with the lightest stress to them. So that's how living organism works, and it's not just your bones, it's not just etc., but the hearing as well. And that's why I am putting in the effort to regularly check how my hearing is. And then when I'm checking my notes at 19.0 kilohertz, it's easy to hear without effort, and it is so loud at that 50% mark that it drills my ears, and it's painfully loud. Yeah. And then when I go to 19.8 kilohertz, then I notice there that it's noticeably louder in the left ear. And compared to the 19.5, it's a lot easier to detect, because the 19.5 was still in a tinnitus zone. So at 19.5 there was still a ringing, but even with that ringing going on, I could still hear the note quite clearly. So it also tells me that the ringing is probably not at exactly 19.5 kilohertz. It might have been just something really close to it, maybe like 19.4, 19.6. I haven't toyed around with it. I could do some Sherlock Holmesing and then put in a couple more numbers, but you have to be cautious. You cannot just spend too much time playing around with frequencies in the 18 plus kilohertz range, because even if the notes sound faint to you, you can barely hear it, but in the volume control, what the output is from the headphones, it can be very well already in the 90 dB or 100 dB plus range, because we need to crank up the output power so much, because the ear sensitivity at those frequencies is so much less. And for example, what I noticed is that what I did, where it was at 18.5 kilohertz, I heard it faintly at 40% and at 50%, which is, I don't know what's the difference in the power output, but likely not more than 20 or 50% more power. It sounded like as if I added like 30-40 dBs in the volume. So our ear doesn't work like a computer that plus 3 dB is always plus 3 dB more. For these very high notes like 17, 18 kilohertz and higher, it is such that up to a certain level you don't even hear anything, and then you barely start to hear anything, and then you just add a tiny bit more volume and it's excruciatingly loud suddenly. So depending on the frequencies, the ear behaves very differently as to the sensitivity of the volume you are getting from the music and your system. And when I got to 20 kilohertz, my notes there are easy to spot. When I set the volume to 70%, which is pretty darn loud. Probably it's like around like 95 dB at least, or maybe 90 dB, I don't know what it was. But when I take it down to 50%, then my note blends into tinnitus, hard to tell, but still I can still spot it there at that volume. But if I crank the volume higher, then it becomes super easy to spot, even 20 kilohertz. And what the impression I got from it is that I could crank the frequencies a lot higher than that and I could still hear it. So I did not feel that it's stressing my ear to a level that I can barely hear it. No, it was really clear, just like hitting a note here. Like I hit play, easy to hear. Maybe you didn't hear anything because I'm using this webcam microphone and I don't think it recorded that 14 kilohertz note, but easy to hear. So anyway, I'm a little bit frustrated that I cannot test anything higher than 20 kilohertz, but this will be a fantastic tool for everyone to play around. And I give you a final warning before I let you toy around with it, is that what I noticed that last night, after doing all of this, I had the mother of tinnitus going to sleep. And even like for frequencies, when I go to like 18 kilohertz and higher, my warning is that when you do that, just hit play and then for 2 seconds, no more, stop it. Do you hear it? And then whether you heard it or not, just stop it. And then again, that's it. And then don't play more with it. because if you just hit play and you let it play for like 20 seconds, that's enough to start damaging your hearing, because the volumes at which the energies that they are transmitting, if you are at a volume where you, yeah, that was clear here, but probably nothing there. The ear is really sensitive to those really high frequencies, and you would say that that then what's the point of making those high frequencies? Because in the music, when we listen to these components, when they are like 20 kilohertz or 30 kilohertz, whatever your audio system can transmit, those are transients, like just for a few milliseconds often, and when it's just that fast ping, then it's not damaging to the ear. It becomes damaging when you expose your ear continuously to the same frequency for a period of time, like 10-20 seconds at high energy level. So whenever you have your volume control, if you keep it at 50% and you go like to the A4 and you click on it, and then you will hear if it's like super duper loud. Let me just put it back here. Then that's the energy you are also getting at that 20 kilohertz range or whatever you set it. So be mindful that you don't want to keep it up that loud for a long time. And if you just keep it like 1 or 2 seconds for each note, where you have these settings like more than like 30% for the very high notes, then you should be safe. And it is a wonderful way to learn more about your hearing, to map out how your hearing is now, and then you get to work on it. You progress on your hearing, do it a year later, keep a notebook, maybe like an Excel sheet or something, and then you won't lose it, or a Google Docs or something, and then you can update it every year. That's what I'm doing. I have like a Google Sheets, and then I can update it yearly, and that's it. And then you will have something, a benchmark for you of how you are progressing, what's happening. And you can also notice if you notice a sudden decline somewhere, that maybe you need medical attention as well. And this is kind of like your yearly checkup that every audiophile should do for yourself. So thank you, team. Have an amazing day and play around. As I say in the description, I will provide the link to this tone generator. Bye bye.